I never thought the person I trusted most, my best friend at work, would stab me in the back just to impress our boss. But when she stole my idea and smiled like nothing happened, I knew I had to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. My name is Quinn, and until a few months ago, I believed I had my life under control. Every morning started the same way. A steaming mug of coffee, the hum of my old kettle, and the faint sound of morning traffic outside my apartment window. I'd sit by the counter reviewing project notes, convincing myself that today would be the day I finally impressed my boss, Mr. Harrison. I worked as a marketing strategist at a mid-sized tech firm in Seattle. It wasn't glamorous, but it was my pride. After years of unpaid internships and long nights fueled by caffeine and hope, I finally landed a position that made me feel seen. And at the center of it all was Lena, my best friend, my office partner in crime. She was the kind of person everyone liked instantly. Confident, charming, effortlessly social. We'd share lunch breaks, gossip about office drama, and even plan our weekend hikes together. There were times I thought, wow, I'm so lucky to have a friend like her. Lena had joined the company a year before me, and she'd taken me under her wing. She showed me how to navigate the unspoken politics of the office, when to speak, when to stay silent, which jokes made the boss laugh. In a way, she was my mentor, but also, I thought, my sister. I can still remember the scent of her lavender perfume mixed with the smell of burnt coffee in the break room. Every time she walked by, it was like the air shifted, lighter, warmer. Everyone adored her. Especially Mr. Harrison. First, I didn't mind. Lena deserved recognition. She worked hard too. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. It started small. She began taking over during our brainstorming sessions, subtly steering conversations, rephrasing my words like they were her own. Wait, Quinn, that's what you meant, right? Like creating emotional branding that builds trust. I'd nod, smiling politely, because correcting her in front of everyone felt awkward. Besides, she was my friend. She wouldn't mean anything by it, right? There were nights I'd stay late at the office, polishing presentations while the glow of my desk lamp painted shadows across the walls. Lena would swing by my cubicle with that same reassuring smile. Go home, Quinn, she'd say. You work too hard. But she never stayed late with me. Never once offered to help finalize the decks we both presented as a team. Still, I brushed it off. That's what friends did, right? Pick up where the other left off. Then came the campaign, the biggest project of the year. Mr. Harrison wanted a bold, innovative marketing strategy that could redefine our brand. Everyone knew whoever led this campaign would be in line for a major promotion. For weeks, I lived and breathed that project. I skipped dinners, canceled plans, even stopped watching my favorite shows. My apartment became a graveyard of sticky notes and coffee cups. But it was worth it because my idea was brilliant. It was called The Human Link, a campaign centered on emotional storytelling to reconnect users with technology through empathy. It wasn't just marketing, it was personal. It represented everything I believed in about people and connection. And the best part? Lena had encouraged me. She'd say things like, "You're a genius, Quinn. This could change everything." I trusted her completely. So when she asked to review my pitch the night before our big presentation, I didn't hesitate. I emailed her my entire draft, the slides, the concept notes, everything. The next morning I arrived early, heart pounding, rehearsing every line in my head. Lena waved at me from across the room, holding her coffee, smiling as always. That same smile I used to find comforting. But when the meeting began, my entire world shifted. Mr. Harrison stood at the front of the conference room, beaming. "Lena," he said, "this is extraordinary. The Human Link. It's fresh, emotional, and exactly what we need." My breath caught. I turned to her, waiting for her to correct him. But she didn't. She stood there, presenting my work, my words, my heart, like it was hers. And when her eyes met mine, there was no guilt. Just a small, confident smirk. That was the moment something in me cracked. I smiled back, pretending nothing was wrong, but deep inside, something dark whispered, "You trusted the wrong person, Quinn." And for the first time, I started to wonder what revenge would feel like. The moment Lena finished presenting my idea, the room erupted in applause. Mr. Harrison's smile stretched from ear to ear. "Lena, this is exactly the kind of creative thinking we've been waiting for," he said, his voice filled with admiration. I sat there, frozen. My palms were slick with sweat, And my heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear the rest of the conversation. She didn't even glance at me. When the meeting ended, people gathered around her, congratulating her brilliance. Wow, Lena, that concept was amazing. How do you even come up with something like that? Each word stabbed deeper. And when she turned to me, pretending to be humble, she said softly, "Thanks for your support, Quinn. Couldn't have done it without your feedback." Feedback. That word echoed in my head all day like a cruel joke. I forced a smile and nodded, but inside I was trembling with disbelief, with humiliation, and something darker. Back at my desk, I stared blankly at the glowing screen. My email notification pinged. A company-wide announcement. Congratulations to Lena for leading our new campaign. The human link. I could feel eyes on me, sympathetic glances from coworkers who probably knew. But no one said a word. At lunch, I sat alone for the first time in months. My sandwich tasted like cardboard. The smell of reheated curry from the microwave made my stomach twist. I heard laughter from across the room. Lena, surrounded by our team, basking in her new spotlight. For a moment, I almost convinced myself to let it go. Maybe it wasn't worth it. Maybe this was the price of being too trusting. But then came the next blow. That evening, Mr. Harrison called me into his office. "Quinn," he said warmly, "I want to thank you for supporting Lena's concept. She spoke very highly of your help." "My help? She's got real leadership potential," he continued. "We're considering her for a promotion. I'm sure you'll get your turn soon." I nodded, numb. The fluorescent light above flickered, making the shadows on the wall dance. "I understand," I whispered. But the truth was I didn't. I left his office, my hands shaking. I went straight to the restroom, locked myself inside, and just stood there, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My mascara was smudged, my eyes red. I didn't even recognize the woman staring back at me. I whispered under my breath, "How could you do this, Lena?" Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. Lena's name was suddenly everywhere. Emails, internal memos, company newsletters. She was the visionary behind the human link. And me? I became invisible. She started taking subtle jabs during meetings. "I guess not everyone can think outside the box," she'd say with a little laugh, eyes flicking toward me. The others would chuckle awkwardly, not realizing how much it cut. Every laugh felt like a nail driven into my dignity. At home, I'd collapse on the couch, still in my work clothes, staring at the ceiling. The apartment was silent except for the ticking clock. Even my cat, Willow, seemed to sense something was off. She'd curl beside me quietly like she knew I was breaking. Some nights I'd replay that meeting over and over in my head. The way she smiled, the way Mr. Harrison praised her, the way I sat there doing nothing. Why didn't I speak up? Why did I let her win? One Friday evening, after another exhausting day of fake smiles and whispered gossip, I saw something that shattered the last piece of my restraint. I had stayed late again, trying to avoid people. As I walked past the conference room, I saw Lena and Mr. Harrison inside, laughing, their voices low but playful. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, leaning closer. My stomach dropped. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal or realizing how deep her manipulation ran. When she left the room and spotted me in the hallway, she froze for just a second, then smiled. "Still here, Quinn? You should go home. You look tired." That was it. The smile. That smug, polished, perfect smile that had fooled everyone, including me. I went home that night in silence, my chest burning with a mix of rage and clarity. Maybe I couldn't change what she'd done, but I could make sure she'd never do it again. That night, as the city lights flickered outside my window, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't crying. I was planning. For days, I lived in silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that hums like static in your head, making every breath feel heavy. Every morning, I'd go through the motions, wake up, brush my hair, pour coffee, pretending everything was fine. But inside, something had cracked beyond repair. At work, Lena glowed. She floated through the office like she owned it, and maybe in a way she did now. People gravitated toward her. Her name was whispered in every hallway, every meeting. Meanwhile, I became the ghost of who I used to be. No one asked about my ideas anymore. My emails went unanswered. My contributions were quietly absorbed into the background noise. Even when I spoke, people seemed distracted, like they were just waiting for Lena to chime in. I started skipping lunch, hiding behind my computer screen, pretending to be busy. But the truth was I couldn't bear to see her face. Not after what she took from me. One afternoon during a meeting, Mr. Harrison asked Lena to present the campaign progress. She clicked through my slides, my designs, my strategy, all rebranded with her name on every document. When she finished, everyone clapped. And then Mr. Harrison said something that broke me completely. "You're an inspiration to the whole team, Lena. Maybe Quinn can learn a thing or two from you." There it was, humiliation wrapped in a polite smile. My throat tightened. I nodded and forced a smile, but my vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. I excused myself, muttering something about a migraine, and walked straight to the restroom. The second the door closed, I collapsed against the sink. Tears burned down my cheeks before I could stop them. I looked at myself in the mirror. The same woman who used to be confident, hopeful, full of ideas, now hollow-eyed, trembling. I whispered, "You're pathetic," and it echoed back like an accusation. I sank to the floor, clutching my knees. The cold tile pressed against my skin. I don't know how long I stayed there, 10 minutes, maybe an hour. Time didn't exist in that moment. Later that evening, I sat in my car, parked in the far corner of the office lot, watching through the window as Lena left with Mr. Harrison. They were laughing again. Her hand brushed his arm and he didn't pull away. Something inside me snapped. Not with rage, but with finality. I realized I wasn't just angry at Lena. I was angry at myself. For trusting her. For staying quiet. For letting her walk all over me. The world outside blurred through my tears. The city lights looked like watercolor, soft and meaningless. I drove home without turning on the radio. The silence was deafening. When I got home, the apartment felt colder than usual. The air smelled faintly of stale coffee and wilted flowers. Willow meowed softly, jumping onto my lap, as if trying to comfort me. I buried my face in her fur and sobbed until my throat hurt. In that moment, I thought about quitting. I thought about walking away, deleting everything and starting over somewhere else, somewhere no one knew my name. But then I saw the folder still open on my laptop, the human link. Every slide, every note, every late-night idea that she had stolen. I clicked through them one by one, feeling the familiar sting return. But this time, beneath the pain, something else started to rise. Something sharp. I realized Lena hadn't just taken my project. She'd taken my voice, my confidence, my dignity. And if I didn't fight back, she'd win twice. I closed the laptop slowly and wiped my tears. In the dark reflection of the screen, I saw a different version of myself. Not the broken, helpless woman from earlier, but someone colder. Clearer. That night I couldn't sleep. The ticking clock echoed like footsteps. My mind replayed every detail, the smile, the meeting, the laughter. At 2 a.m. I sat up in bed and whispered, "No more." That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to run away. If Lena wanted to play dirty, I'd play smarter. If she built her success on lies, I'd make sure the truth destroyed her. Because revenge isn't about anger. It's about balance. And I was done being the quiet one. I slept like a swan. Calm on the surface, legs paddling like hell underneath. For the first time since everything fell apart, my thoughts had direction. Revenge wasn't a blind fury anymore. It was a plan, clean and methodical. I poured myself coffee, the bittersweet smell cutting through the apartment, and opened my laptop. Willow hopped onto the keyboard, indifferent to corporate betrayals, purring like a tiny engine. I smiled at her and then I got to work. First rule: be smarter than anger. Second rule: collect facts, not fantasies. If this was going to be office revenge, it had to be airtight. No hearsay, no shaky memories, just proof. I started by cataloging everything. File names, timestamps, draft versions, Slack messages, emails, everything that showed I'd created the human link. My hard drive felt heavy with late-night slides and voice memos where I'd spoken into my phone at 2 a.m., refining a line or sketching a visual. I found old photos of my sticky note wall, full of scribbles that matched what ended up in the final deck. Each item was a little flame and I was building a bonfire. Then I did something small and crucial. I exported metadata. I didn't have to be a hacker, just patient. Timestamps on documents, last edited by Fields, version histories in Google Drive. The company's own systems were honest if you knew where to look. I printed copies and put them in a manila folder on my kitchen table. The paper smells strangely soothing. I made digital copies too and encrypted them with a password only I knew. Next, witnesses. People forget details, but people remember feelings. I started talking quietly to a few colleagues I trusted, not to complain, but to ask questions about meeting times and who was in the room during brainstorming sessions. I phrased everything as curiosity, rehearsing lines in my head so I wouldn't sound bitter. A couple of coworkers flinched when I mentioned specifics. They'd noticed Lena's habit of rebranding other people's ideas. A few confided that they'd seen Lena download files from shared drives when she needed inspiration. Nothing dramatic, but enough to create a pattern. I also dug into Lena's behavior. She loved the spotlight and the boss's approval. That was her weakness. People who crave applause tend to repeat themselves, and repeatable behavior is predictable. I started keeping a calendar of her public appearances at company events, noting when she presented, who praised her, and when she slipped up. The more I watched, the more she revealed tiny cracks. A contradictory sentence in one memo. A slide that cited a source that didn't exist. Those cracks could become fault lines. Then came the creative part, the backbone of my plan. If she built her success on stealing my idea, then I would reclaim the narrative in a way she couldn't fake. I would build a version of the human link so undeniable that the office would have to see the truth. Not a petty expose, but a masterclass. A presentation that matched the original concept and expanded it, complete with raw materials showing my process. I wanted something that felt poetic, to show not only that I invented the idea but why I was the one who should lead it. I arranged a helpful meeting with Mr. Harrison, framed as a request for feedback on next steps. I kept my tone casual when I slid an invite into his calendar. Quick sync, refining the human link roadmap. He accepted. I'd baited the hook, but I wasn't going to strike yet. I also prepared contingencies. HR had protocols for intellectual property and credit disputes. I reviewed the employee handbook, printing the relevant clauses that described authorship and contribution. I made notes of the steps required to submit a formal complaint, not because I wanted to run straight to HR, but because the threat of process is leverage. Knowing the rules means you can play within them. And that's exactly what I intended to do. There was also the social angle. Lena's charm depended on a curated image. Approachable, brilliant, likable. I began to speak privately with a few junior teammates who admired her, gently guiding their attention toward the history of the project. The late nights, the odd hours someone had sent a draft, the early sketches that matched the campaign visuals. It wasn't manipulation. It was context. I wanted people to remember who had been there before the applause. The most satisfying part of planning was how quiet it all felt. Revenge is often pictured as loud and dramatic, but the reality is hush and patience. I rehearsed my presentation alone in my living room, the city lights leaking through the blinds. I practiced not with rage but with measured calm. I kept my voice even, my slides factual, letting proof do the work. The night before the showdown, I packed the manila folder into my bag. The paper edges brushed my fingers like a secret. My heart thudded in a steady rhythm. Not the wild beat of panic, but the steady percussion of someone who knows what she's about to do. Before I closed the door, I looked at Willow, raised a brow and whispered, "Tomorrow we make it right." She blinked unimpressed and then purred. Outside, the city was asleep, but inside me, something had shifted from hurt to purpose. And yet, even as I rehearsed the opening lines in my head, a small voice murmured a question I couldn't ignore. What if Lena sees it coming? That doubt hung in the air like the last note of a song, brief, sharp, and full of possibility. I tightened my grip on the folder and walked out into the night. The plan had been sitting in my mind for weeks, a silent seed watered by every fake smile and insincere compliment Amanda threw my way. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted her to feel what I felt, that mix of humiliation, betrayal, and powerlessness she gifted me so effortlessly. It started small. I began keeping track of her projects, her meetings, her private calls with our boss. She thought she was being discreet, slipping into Mark's office after hours, giggling behind closed doors, whispering about new initiatives. But she underestimated me. I had learned from her how to watch quietly, how to pretend, how to strike when no one expected it. One night, while the office was nearly empty, I stayed late finishing reports. I accessed the shared drive, the same one where Amanda often saved her drafts, and I discovered something shocking. She had been taking internal reports and altering data to make her performance appear better. Her numbers, her charts, her quarterly growth, all falsified. I stared at the screen, the reality sinking in. She wasn't just manipulative. She was corrupt. That's when everything shifted inside me. My revenge wasn't about ego anymore. It became about justice. The next day, I printed out the altered documents, keeping them in a plain envelope labeled confidential. Then I waited. Timing would be everything. At the next Monday meeting, Amanda strutted in wearing her confidence like armor. She presented her achievements with a charming smile, the boss nodding approvingly, the rest of us pretending to be impressed. I watched in silence until Mark asked for the report validation. That was my cue. Actually, I said calmly, I think there's something you might want to see before we move forward. I handed the envelope across the table. Silence fell like a curtain. Mark opened it, his eyes darting across the printed pages, the original data, the falsified numbers, the timestamps. His face hardened. Amanda's smile faltered. What is this supposed to be? She stammered, her voice shaking. Mark's tone turned cold. It looks like we've got some serious inconsistencies here. Care to explain? The room went dead silent. Every colleague stared, pretending not to enjoy the show but unable to look away. Amanda's confidence dissolved, her charm cracked, and her voice trembled as she tried to defend herself. But the evidence spoke louder than any excuse. I sat there, calm, composed, heart pounding in quiet satisfaction. For weeks I had felt invisible, and now, for the first time, she was the one exposed. When the meeting ended, Amanda avoided my eyes, her face pale, her lips pressed tight. Mark told her to stay behind for a private discussion. I walked out of the room slowly, feeling the weight lift from my chest. The whispers began almost immediately, office gossip spreading like wildfire. By the end of the day, everyone knew. But instead of joy, I felt something unexpected. Emptiness. I'd spent so long plotting her downfall that when it finally happened, there was no satisfaction left, only the echo of what I had lost. My peace, my innocence, my ability to trust. Still, part of me whispered that this was justice. And justice, no matter how cold, always comes at a cost. That night, as I packed up my things, Amanda walked past my desk, eyes red, mascara smudged. For the first time, she didn't look like a villain. She looked human. Was it you? She asked quietly. I didn't answer. I just looked at her, the silence between us saying everything words couldn't. She gave a weak smile. I guess I deserved it, she whispered before walking away. And for the first time since this whole thing began, I didn't feel anger. Just release. The following week felt like walking through the aftermath of a storm. The air in the office was heavy, quiet, tense, and filled with whispers that stopped the moment someone walked by. Amanda's desk sat empty for days, her computer untouched, her coffee mug still half full like she just stepped away. But everyone knew she wasn't coming back. Rumors spread fast. She'd been suspended pending an internal investigation. HR had found a trail of manipulated reports going back several months. Mark, who once praised her relentlessly, now avoided mentioning her name. It was like she'd been erased from the company's story, a ghost haunting every hallway. At first, I thought I'd feel triumphant. After all, this was what I wanted: justice, payback, balance. But the strange thing about revenge is that it doesn't end when your enemy falls. It lingers. Every morning, I'd glance at Amanda's empty chair and feel something twist inside me. Guilt maybe. Or pity. Or both. One afternoon, Mark called me into his office. He looked exhausted, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones. I wanted to thank you, he said, his voice flat. You probably saved us from a major scandal. I nodded, unsure what to say. Then he added, but I need to ask, how did you find out? That question cut deeper than I expected. I could have lied, said it was a coincidence, a lucky discovery. But I didn't. I found out because I was watching, I said. Because I wanted to know the truth. He studied me for a long time, then leaned back. Sometimes the truth isn't easy, he said quietly, even when we do the right thing. When I left his office, those words followed me like a shadow. That night, as I sat in my car before driving home, I received a message, a simple text from an unknown number. Thank you for teaching me a lesson. I hope it was worth it. No name, but I didn't need one. My hands froze around the phone. Amanda. I stared at the message for minutes before locking the screen. I didn't reply. What could I possibly say? That I was sorry? That I didn't mean to ruin her life? Because deep down I knew I did. A few days later, HR announced Amanda's official termination. No farewell email. No goodbye party. Just silence. The office moved on quickly. New projects, new faces, the same routine. But something had changed in me. I no longer laughed as easily. I no longer trusted as freely. Revenge had given me power, but it had taken something in return, the part of me that believed people could be better. One evening as I was packing up, a junior colleague approached me. "You're kind of amazing," she said shyly. "You stood up for yourself. I wish I had your courage." I smiled faintly. "Courage," I echoed, "isn't always as clean as it looks." Because the truth was, courage hadn't driven me. Pain had. And pain, once unleashed, doesn't just destroy others. Consumes you too. In the months that followed, I tried to rebuild myself, focusing on work, helping my team, being the kind of colleague I once wished Amanda had been. Slowly, I regained my balance. But the memory of her, of us, stayed. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wonder if she found another job, another place to start over. If she ever forgave me. If I ever forgave myself. Revenge had ended her career, but it had also ended a part of me. The naive, trusting version that believed hard work and honesty were enough. Still, maybe that was the real lesson. The world isn't fair, but you can choose who you become after the fall. And as I looked out the window one last time before turning off the office lights, I whispered softly to the empty chair across from me, "Goodbye, Amanda. I hope you learned something." I know I did. Months passed. The season changed from summer's warmth to the chill of late autumn. I still worked in the same office, sat at the same desk, but everything felt different. The air wasn't heavy anymore, just quiet. Peaceful even. But sometimes, when I'd sip my morning coffee and watch the sunrise paint the glass towers outside, I'd think about Amanda. There was a time when her name filled me with anger, betrayal, and bitterness. Now it only brought silence, like the echo of a song that had long stopped playing. One afternoon I found an old photo while cleaning my computer. A picture of us from a company retreat. We were laughing, arms slung over each other's shoulders, like sisters who believed nothing could come between them. I stared at it for a long time. I almost didn't recognize the girl smiling beside her. That version of me, full of hope, trust, and innocence, seemed like someone else. Revenge changes you. It sharpens your edges. It makes you stronger, yes, but it also takes pieces of you in exchange. I thought I'd find peace once Amanda got what she deserved. Instead, I learned that peace doesn't come from watching others fall. It comes from learning to rise again without hate in your heart. I realized something important. Justice and revenge are not the same. Justice restores balance. Revenge feeds pain. I had sought revenge thinking it would heal me. But it didn't. It just quieted the noise for a while. The real healing came when I forgave. Not her but myself. One evening I walked past a small cafe near the office, the same one where Amanda and I used to brainstorm over cappuccinos. I stopped for a moment, tempted to go in, but instead I stood outside watching people laugh inside. Life moves on, I thought. And so should I. That night I wrote in my journal, "Revenge may give you victory, but forgiveness gives you freedom." It wasn't about letting her off the hook. It was about letting myself go. The anger, the resentment, the endless cycle of what-ifs, they'd weighed me down for too long. The next morning, I went to HR and recommended a new mentorship program, one that focused on integrity, teamwork, and transparent collaboration. I wanted younger employees to learn that trust is something to be built, not used. That success doesn't come from stealing ideas but from creating together. Weeks later, the program launched, and for the first time in a long while I felt proud again. Not of revenge, but of redemption. On the final day of that quarter, as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed with a new email. The sender's name made my breath hitch. Amanda. It was short. Just one line. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're doing well." I stared at it for a long time, my heart heavy but not angry. Then I typed back slowly. "I'm okay. I hope you are too." And with that I finally let go. As I walked out of the building, the sky above me was painted in shades of gold and crimson. For the first time in years I felt light, like the weight I'd been carrying had finally lifted. Because revenge had taught me a cruel but beautiful truth. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you rise after they do. And as the wind brushed my hair and the city lights began to glow, I whispered to myself, softly but with conviction, justice is not always about making them suffer. Sometimes it's about finding peace, even when they don't deserve it. Then, as the screen fades to black, Quinn's voice closes the story. If you've ever been betrayed, remember this. Your worth isn't defined by the ones who hurt you. It's defined by how you heal. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, give this video a like. It helps more people find stories like ours. Share your own experience in the comments below, because your story might give someone else the courage to heal. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of justice, strength, and hope. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply moving on stronger.